Picture this. It's 1932. You're in Svalbard, Norway, which is one of the most northern places people actually live on Earth. Outside a tiny wooden hut, it's minus 30 degrees Celsius, and the sun hasn't come up in weeks. This is the polar night. And inside that hut, a 21-year-old woman named Ingrid Halvorsen is stranded, totally and completely alone.
This is a line from the last page of her diary. It was found in that hut. And it just perfectly captures that razor's edge between hope and despair that she lived on for years. But see, this isn't just a story about surviving against the elements. No, there's a twist here that is just deeply unsettling.
4 years. Just let that sink in for a second. I mean, for 1,460 days, Ingrid fought the cold, the hunger, and this absolutely crushing loneliness. But the really chilling part? For 3 of those years, the world, including her own family, believed she had already been rescued.
All right, so how on earth does something like this even happen? Well, we have to go back to the beginning, to the summer of 1928, when a trip that was supposed to be completely routine turned into an absolute nightmare.
So Ingrid's father was a trapper, and she joined this small supply ship with a crew of 7. The mission was simple, really, just deliver provisions to a remote trapping outpost about 180 kilometers north of Longyearbyen. Everything seemed perfect. The weather was clear, the sea was calm, just another routine day in the Arctic.
And this just goes to show you how brutally fast the Arctic can turn on you. On the 3rd day out, this thick fog just rolls in. Then the barometer plummets, a classic sign a major storm is coming. The winds kick up from a breeze to a gale, and before anyone can even react, a huge wave just slams their ship right into the icy cliffs.
So in the middle of all that chaos, they get Ingrid onto an inflatable raft. But the thing about Arctic currents is they are incredibly treacherous and unpredictable. Her little raft got pulled away from everyone else. The last thing she ever saw of the ship was it just disappearing into this wall of snow and fog. And when she finally washes up on land, the terrible truth hits her. She is utterly alone.
You'd think landing on solid ground would be a relief, right? But for Ingrid, landing on that rock was just the beginning of her ordeal. The shock started to wear off, and the brutal reality of her new home set in. A tiny, isolated prison of ice and stone.
Right away, her survival instincts kicked in. She knew that getting wet out there was basically a death sentence, so she scrambled for higher ground. And that's when she found a small miracle, a little abandoned trapper's hut. It was barely a shelter, but inside she found the basic tools for survival. For a few hours, she let herself cling to the hope that rescue is coming soon.
And here, this is where the real tragedy of the story begins. Because what Ingrid didn't know, couldn't have known, was that the ship's distress signal had been garbled. It was incomplete. A search team was sent out, but they were looking in a completely different area. From the very first night she was stranded, she was basically invisible to the world.
So as the days turned into weeks and then months, something shifted in Ingrid. That hope for a quick rescue was replaced by this steely determination just to survive. She wasn't a victim waiting anymore. No, she was becoming a survivor, learning to master this brutal new world.
She developed this incredibly strict routine. See, survival in the Arctic is all about one thing: conserving energy. So she methodically gathered fuel, she found high-fat food from seabird colonies, and she brilliantly used snow as insulation, building walls to fortify her hut against winds that could scream past at 90 kilometers per hour.
But just when she felt like she was getting a handle on the weather, on the hunger, a whole new threat appeared, a much more immediate one. One night, deep in the endless dark of the polar night, she heard something she'd never heard before. It was the sound of heavy footsteps crunching in the snow right outside her door. And the next morning, there was the proof, clear as day. These massive paw prints circling her tiny hut. A polar bear! It had found her island. She was now sharing her 800-meter-long prison with the Arctic's apex predator. The danger wasn't just the cold anymore. It was alive, and it was probably very hungry. As terrifying as a polar bear is, maybe the most relentless enemy she faced was the one inside her own head. Imagine this, months of 24-hour darkness. It starts to play tricks on you. She'd hear the faint drone of a plane's engine, and she'd run outside into the blistering cold, only to find nothing but the sound of the wind. That false hope became its own special kind of torture.
So, a year passes, then 2, then 3. By this point, Ingrid is a master of survival. She's faced down starvation, hypothermia, polar bears, but there had to be this one question just eating away at her every single day.
Why? Why did no one come for her? After all this time, why was she still alone? The answer? Well, it's somehow more mundane and more terrifying than any Arctic storm.
A system error. That's the whole reason. The incomplete distress signal was misinterpreted, someone somewhere filed a report incorrectly, and just like that, the official record was updated. As far as the rest of the world knew, Ingrid Halvorsen was safe. The search was called off. She was officially, but incorrectly, marked as rescued.
And this, right here, this is the real heart of her story. She thought her enemies were the forces of nature, the freezing cold, starvation, the bears. But a real prison, it wasn't the island. It was bureaucracy. Her real enemy was an incomplete signal, a misfiled report, a single unchecked box on a piece of paper.
Okay, so we're in her 4th year now. Most people would have given up hope entirely. But not Ingrid. With the sun finally returning for the summer, she decides to make one final, desperate attempt to be seen by a world that had literally written her off. She was smart. She knew a simple signal fire would be useless in those high winds, so she thought bigger. Way bigger. On the island's highest cliff, she used driftwood, dark stones, burnt coal, anything she could find to build this massive 15-meter-long signal. It was a scar on the landscape that you just couldn't mistake for something natural.
And then, a flat-out miracle. A Norwegian survey plane on a totally routine mission happens to fly overhead. The pilot spots an unusual pattern on the ground below. As the plane dips low for a closer look, Ingrid hears it. An engine. And this time, after 4 long years, this time, it was real.
I mean, her story is just this incredible testament to human resilience, right? But it's also a warning. This quote from the investigation that followed really says it all. The most powerful force that kept her isolated wasn't a storm or a sea of ice. It was just a simple clerical mistake.
So what do we take away from this? It leaves us with this haunting question. We spend so much time and energy preparing for the big, obvious dangers, right? The forces of nature we can see. But Ingrid's experience forces us to ask, what's truly more dangerous? The predator you can see coming or the tiny, invisible error buried in a system you're supposed to trust?